Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Adrian. If you're not, hi, how are you? Love you, miss you. So I didn't get a chance to actually figure out what kind of video I wanted to record today. I ended up getting a little busy and I ended up going to the lake with a couple of my friends, which was super fun. Haven't actually swam in a while, so that was awesome. But today we're just going to be surfing on Reddit, the subreddit specifically r/scarystories. I'm going to be reading a couple of my favorites. So today we're going to be starting with the one called Missing Posters by user Erutius. And if y'all end up liking this video, then we can start a series, and yeah, I think it'll be fun. So let's go. Once again, this is Missing Posters. Ralph walked a lot, like every day a lot. He lost his car a few years ago during the pandemic, not because he couldn't pay for it, but because he had a habit of driving drunk, and the cops took his license after the third time, so it didn't make a lot of sense to have it. He'd walked ever since, and it kind of helped with his sobriety. He was a bit of a mess before that, drinking a lot, showing up to work hungover, eating too much fast food, but the walking had helped him drop a lot of weight, and it kind of made him not want to drink. Walking while you were drunk was kind of miserable, and when walking was your means of transport, you got pretty good at avoiding things that left you unable to do it. Ralph was coming into town on Tuesday, walking up the sidewalk that led from the trailer park he lived in to the grocery store when he saw the first sign. It was a normal enough white sign, with big block letters at the top that read "Missing." The thing that stopped him was the face that looked out from the sign. It was a guy of about 300 pounds, thinning hair pulled back into a ponytail, and deep bags under his eyes. He was a deeply unhappy man. A man who looked like he was just looking for a hole to die in. And if it had a beer in it, then all the better. The eyes that stared out of that poster looked like the eyes that stared from between the bars of a drunk tank. And they had more than once. Ralph reached out and took the sign, staring into eyes that he hadn't seen in years. He was looking at himself, just a past version of himself. A version 2 or 3 years out of date. Out of date was a good way to describe it. Like spoiled milk. Missing, Ralph Gilbert. Address, 9733 Erin Way, Trailer 17. Last seen, April 23rd, 2023. Walking along the shoulder of the road. Call Filibuster Sheriff's Office with any information. Cash reward possible. Cash reward, Ralph thought. It was weird to think that someone would be willing to offer a cash reward for someone like him, but he supposed it was possible. The friends he had now certainly valued him more than his bitch of an ex-wife or either of his ungrateful kids had. More than the family he had left too, for that matter. He put the flyer back up, thinking it was weird that they hadn't just come to the house to see if he was there. He had been there for a week after the what, he thought. The night that something had happened. Something Ralph couldn't really remember. He kept walking up the street, enjoying the later afternoon as it dwindled towards dusk. It was his favorite time to walk, he thought. The weather was hot, even for early May. He spent most days inside due to the heat, and the way the sun had made his eyes hurt lately. The evening walks were about the best thing for him. He couldn't wait till autumn came and he could stand to walk during the day again. The last thing he wanted to do was lose his progress. 2021 had been a pretty turbulent year for Ralph. But not all of it had been bad. He had started noticing that the walking was making him lose weight, and that he had felt better about being more active. It would have been very easy to sit on his couch and feel bad about it. He had certainly done that for a while. But as his food ran out and the money he had gotten from his disability payments had started to dwindle, he knew he was going to need to do something. That was how the walking had started. Walk to the grocery store, walk to McDonald's, walk to the 24/7 Phil's that he worked nights at, and walk home. After a while, people in the trailer park started noticing he was walking, and they would offer to pay him if he would walk their dogs. Pretty soon, Ralph had a bunch of mutts on leashes, and he became known as the Dog Man. Soon, people came to walk their dogs with him, and Ralph felt like he finally had friends. He hadn't had friends since high school, and the ones he'd had then had never let him into anything healthy. These guys were walking with him, helping him find shoes that wouldn't pinch his feet and give him blisters, suggesting pants that wouldn't give him a heat rash. And one day, Ralph hopped on the scale and discovered he had lost 50 pounds. By 2022, it was 100. By the next year, he was at 180 and feeling better than he ever had. His trips to McDonald's were down to once a week. His dog walking was making enough money to keep his bills paid and his fridge filled, and Ralph felt better than he had in years. He felt like that right up until last week when something had happened. As Ralph came into town, he saw more of the signs hanging on the poles. He was a little curious as to why no one had come to the trailer to check on him if they were so worried. He had been there all week. They could have come and knocked. Ralph had been kind of out of it the last week, though, and was worried that he might have caught something. He barely remembered stumbling home after whatever had happened. Ralph hadn't liked that. It reminded him of being drunk and out of control again. How many times had he stumbled into his trailer after a night of drinking to find that he couldn't remember how he got there? He sat on his couch, just looking at the dark television, and suddenly, he wondered where the groceries had gone. That was when he remembered that he'd been carrying groceries. He had been coming back from the Forest Hill grocer, bags bulging in his hands, and he had come around the corner, Matheson Curve, and then he didn't know. Something had made him squint, and he thought, oh shit, there goes my milk. And then he had been walking back into his trailer. As he walked into town now, he saw more missing posters, and it started to give him the creeps. Watching his own face, his false face, looking back at him was eerie, and he wanted to rip him down. He was here. He was alive. Why were they looking for him? He wasn't missing. He was walking up the road. He passed people, side-eyeing them as if expecting to be recognized. But they just walked right past him without a look back. That was weird, Ralph thought. Yeah, he'd been gone for a week, but people surely hadn't forgotten him that quickly. He'd been sitting in his trailer for a week before he thought that a walk seemed like a good idea. It was weird. The food should have run out by now. But Ralph really hadn't been hungry. He'd moved between the living room and bedroom like a sleepwalker, sleeping like he hadn't done since he was still 300 pounds of lazy couch potato. He hadn't felt like he needed to eat anything either, though, and that was rare. Despite his weight loss, he still had to manage his prodigious appetite. He couldn't even remember drinking water that whole week. And until he had gotten up to walk, he had worried that he was catching the flu. He had wandered around in a daze, just kind of existing. And it made him feel good when the afternoon had finally called to him. As he walked towards the supermarket, however, he suddenly wished he had stayed at home. Sitting in the parking lot of Forest Hill Grocer was a green Ford Focus that had become the focus of his terror. It shouldn't have been that way. It was just a car. But there was something about it that made him stop and stare. His legs felt made of lead, and his bowels would have turned to water, except he remembered that he hadn't done that all week either. That made sense, he supposed. Nothing going in meant nothing coming out, right? It didn't matter. After a week of no food or water, Ralph should have been dead. And that thought seemed to move him at long last. He was suddenly walking toward the car, his eyes falling on a dent in the front bumper. That was a fresh dent, though Ralph didn't know how he knew that. The door to the car was open, and Ralph climbed into the back seat like a sleepwalker. He sat there, waiting for something to happen, feeling kind of silly. This was stupid. The owner of the Focus would come back and ask him what the hell he thought he was doing. He would call the cops. Ralph would go to jail, and then he'd be in big trouble. Well, Ralph thought, at least then they would know where he was. Ralph supposed they could take the signs down if he was sitting in a jail cell. Finally, after an indeterminable amount of time, the owner came out with groceries in brown paper bags. He was a young kid, maybe 20 or 22, and when he opened the back door, he set them inside without comment. Ralph watched him move around to the front seat and climb in, cranking the car and driving off. The further they went, the more sure Ralph was that the kid would see him. The kid would look in the rearview mirror, see Ralph sitting there and freak out. He might have a wreck, and Ralph would feel terrible about that. The longer they rode without the kid commenting on his presence, the stranger it all felt. Ralph leaned toward the kid a little, meaning to tap him. But as he did, he caught a look of the rearview mirror and stopped. The back seat in the mirror was empty, except for the groceries. That's when he remembered. And suddenly, Ralph wasn't in the kid's focus anymore. Suddenly, he was back on the side of the road, near the guardrail for Matheson Curve, and he could see the headlights in his eyes again. The kid had been going too fast, hot-rodding around, and his tires had screeched as he hit Ralph. Ralph's groceries had gone everywhere, his milk squishing under the tire as his lettuce rolled under the guardrail. The kid had come out and found Ralph lying across the guardrail, moaning and groaning as he lay dying. The kid had thrown him back, bringing him to rest against the metal rail that had broken his back. He had looked at the kid, begging him to help him, and in his panic, the kid had done the only thing he could think to do. He had pushed Ralph over the side of the rail and into the drop below. It was night now, and Ralph was looking over that rail again. He couldn't see his body down below. It had fallen to the bottom and likely been picked clean by scavengers. But he knew it was down there. Ralph would likely go on to be a town legend, someone who just disappeared one day after making a slight splash in filibuster. But for now, all he could do was look down into the ravine and wonder what to do next. He had read some ghost stories when he was younger, and wrote a few when he got older, but it wasn't every day that she became one. Something wafted past on a stray wind, and when Ralph caught it, he realized it was one of the missing posters. An idea occurred to him, and he thought maybe he wouldn't have to stay a mystery. Officer Vermis stood by the guardrail, ready to catch the kid if he decided to take a nosedive. It was pretty high. He might opt for the short flight over a lengthy prison sentence, but Vermis doubted it. The wind pushed his hair just as it did the officer's jacket, and he pointed down almost accusingly as he turned to the kid. "Is this where you pushed the body over?" Vermis asked. The kid, Tyler Missett, nodded before being taken back to the station in the back of a different squad car. Vermis sighed. This was going to be some hard canvassing, but they would find Ralph Gilbert. When they had gone to the kid's house, he had as good as confessed on the spot, and that had made it all very easy. He was repentant, very sorry, and very young, and some soft-hearted judge would probably not insist on the death penalty for him. It was unlikely he could ever operate a motor vehicle again, not unless the state prison let him run a tractor or something. And he supposed that would have to be good enough. It was weird, though. The police would have probably never known about the accident if it hadn't been for the tip they had gotten. Looking at Ralph's picture on the front of the poster, Vermis remembered the night they'd taken his license. He'd been a bad drunk, but he turned it around, and Vermis hated that he had to end up like this. It was a bigger shame that the kid had his life ruined by a moment of inattention, but those were the breaks. He flipped it over, looking at the odd writing on the back. It had looked like it had been done with mucus, except it was a fluorescent green like the slime they used to dump on the kids in the shows his boys watched when they were younger. He didn't know what had written it, and he didn't care. They could take Ralph Gilbert out of the unsolved case file and put him on the closed case pile. And that was good enough for him. The message read, "Green Ford Focus. Dent in the front bumper. Kid hit Ralph Gilbert about a week ago on Matheson Curve. Body in a ravine. Don't let him rot down there." I don't know about y'all, but I thought that one was pretty cool. On to the next. This next story is called Unknown Creature, and it's by user Phobia117. So, first it gives a little, not disclaimer, but it says, "I posted this story to a different subreddit a while back, but for some reason it got removed. Maybe this is the right place for it, and it's not just a story. This is all true." See, kind of excited but spooked to read this one. It's true, Jesus. Okay, here we go. About 2 years ago, I was hunting in a ground blind on the edge of a field next to a running stream. On the other side of this stream is a stretch of particularly thick woods that goes steeply uphill for about 100 yards. We call this area the thicket. This property is located roughly 2 hours northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. It was still pretty early, cool and overcast with a light misty rain, and it had so far been an uneventful hunt. About 30 minutes into my sit, I hear something coming down the hill from the thicket, walking slowly. I could tell it's a sizable animal, not a squirrel, not even a wild hog. So my mind immediately goes to deer. There are no other large wild animals in this part of the state, except for the occasional black bear, which is so rare that it's always a big local story whenever somebody sees one. I've been living on this property for over 30 years and have never seen one, or any evidence of one. It gets to the edge of the water and stops. I can't look in its direction because the side windows on my blind are closed. So as to not silhouette myself, I only keep the front window open. Everything is quiet for a moment. But about 30 seconds later, I feel something really small, about the size of the acorn, hit on the side of the blind and roll onto the ground. I'm sitting under a small tree, so I don't think much of it. But it happens again. Roughly 15 seconds later, there is no wind blowing today. These occurrences led me to believe that something did fall on the blind. Something was thrown at it. I'm curious now as to what could have caused something like this. There's no people around for miles, and there's no animal around here that can throw things, I hope. I don't have much time to continue my self-interrogation when this thing steps into the water. It takes a couple steps around, and I can hear the sound of the water sloshing around its legs as it walks. That's no deer. Curiosity gets the better of me, so I slowly stand up and as quietly as I can, peel down the side window to get a look at this thing. But there's nothing there. All the sounds have stopped. The water is flowing like normal again. It's like it just flat out disappeared. I sit back down with more questions than I had before, but I'm not sitting for long when the noises start again. This time in earnest. It's splashing around, causing a fuss, and I can even hear a grunting noise this time. This thing, whatever it is making no effort to control its presence. When I hunt, I always carry 3 things: a knife, a 9mm handgun, my primary rifle, a Browning X bolt, chambered in .300 short magnum. I don't know if I'm saying that right. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, the short version is it's an extremely large and powerful bullet with lots of kick. You could probably take down an elephant if you hit it in the right place. The reason I give you this detail is to highlight the fact that at the time of this incident, I was far from defenseless. And the more noise this animal made in the creek, the more I began to believe that my only way out of this encounter, for better or worse, was confrontation. I stand up, unzip the blind, and step into the field, taking the safety off my shoulder cannon. As I round the back end of the blind and turn towards the creek to face my assailant, I'm not sure what I was expecting to see next. What I saw was nothing. Again. No, that's impossible, I found myself saying out loud. Nothing that big and that heavy could just vanish into thin air. What the hell is going on? At this point, I don't care how much heat I'm packing. I'm starting to get spooked. It's time to get out of the woods, and now. My RTV is parked about 150 yards away on the other side of this open field. The house is about a mile past that. But as I turn to make good on my retreat, I can't even take one step before I hear it. Another grunt. I spin around, but I still can't see it, although I can hear it crunching leaves through the thick undergrowth. And this time, I swear I can hear it breathing too. I haven't hunted that field again, and I don't plan to. I don't hunt and I don't ever plan to, but I used to live on a sizable piece of land, and one of my biggest fears was an unknown creature coming onto the property. So this just really accidentally pushed a button. You know what I mean? Jesus Christ. I think I have time for probably one more, and then I'm gonna cut it here because, whew, Jesus. Okay, so this is another longer one. This is called Kentucky Forest, and it's by Reddit user KBBOBOBALOU. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that. Yeah, so here we go. In a small Kentucky town in the year 1972, a group of 6 friends were going on a weekend camping trip. Little did they know this trip would lead them to the edge of a very mysterious forest. As they set up camp, strange things began to happen. The fire flickered unnaturally, and the wind sounded like eerie whispers. As they settled into the campsite, as the sun was setting, the friends noticed an abandoned cabin close to the campsite. They decided to explore it. Never a good idea. The cabin was overrun with weeds, trees, and all sorts of vegetation that the cabin was practically hidden to the human eye. When the friends walked in, they saw an old, creaky rocking chair sitting by the fireplace, covered in dust and cobwebs. It seemed as if the chair had its own story to tell. As they explored more, the friends discovered old family photos on the walls, showing a happy family of 4 used to live there. The dad, a rugged logger, stood tall in the pictures surrounded by his loved ones. The friends all walked into a separate room. In that room, on a desk, was a journal detailing the logger's long hours chopping down trees in the forest. There was mention of a mysterious witch that was meant to be avoided in that forest, and words wrote of strange occurrences and warnings to stay away from the witch's domain. The friends shuddered as they read about the witch with bright blue eyes, who had a sinister desire for the logger's children and wife. The logger's journal described his desperate attempts to protect his family from the witch's dark intentions. The friends continued reading, eager to uncover how the logger outsmarted the witch. As they kept reading, they discovered a hidden trapdoor under a rug in the cabin. Although the trapdoor was locked, and the friends couldn't get in, the friends' curiosity piqued. As they pondered the strange trapdoor, perhaps it led to a hidden passage where the logger stored items to fend off the witch's evil intentions. The friends' anticipation grew as they imagined the possibilities hidden beneath the trapdoor. They envisioned a cache of enchanted weapons and protective amulets, carefully crafted by the logger to shield his family from the witch's dark magic. The friends all then playfully chuckled at the thought of there even being a witch. The friends decided they had enough of the cabin and decided to go back to the campsite to relax by the campfire. They were all exchanging stories and laughing about past memories they shared together growing up, when suddenly they hear a faint, eerie cackle in the distance. The sound sends shivers down their spines, exchanging nervous glances at each other as they realize the witch's laughter is growing closer, filling the night with a sense of foreboding. The friends now all huddling together, their hearts pounding as they strain to hear the witch's evil laughter growing louder in the distance. The friends begin to embrace themselves for the impending encounter with the witch, ready to face whatever challenges come their way. The friends all slowly rise from their seats, their eyes scanning the dark forest as witch's laughter echoes all through the night. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, making every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig feel like a potential threat. The friends, their faces lit by the dancing flames of the campfire, can feel their hearts racing as they prepare to confront the witch lurking in the shadows of the forest. The friends decided to venture into the forest with their heads held high. As they ventured further, the sound of rustling leaves and distant whispers send shivers down their spines. The path ahead is cloaked in mystery, and with each step the air grows colder, hinting at the presence of the witch's magic weaving through the trees. With the friends' hearts pounding and the forest whispering its secrets, the friends pressed on, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the witch's presence. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the distance, drawing them closer like moths to a flame. As they approached, an old, gnarled tree stood before them, the branches twisted into abnormal shapes. As they stood before the ancient tree, a soft, ethereal glow emanates from its gnarled branches, casting a mesmerizing light that dances in the shadows. Whispers of enchantment fill the air, hinting at the presence of something mystical and otherworldly. A faint shimmering script materializes on the bark, revealing the intricate incantation of a long-lost spell. The words pulsed with magical energy. A hushed whisper carried on the wind, beckoning them to follow its melody. Shadows danced around the friends, weaving a tapestry of suspense and intrigue. Suddenly, a figure cloaked in darkness emerged from the mist. It was the witch of the forest, her bright blue eyes gleaming with ancient knowledge. With a cryptic smile, she extended a gnarled hand and spoke words that sent butterflies in their stomachs. The witch's cryptic words lingering like a ghost in the air. As the moon cast a glow upon the twisted branches, a sense of foreboding hit the friends' hearts. Rustling in the undergrowth made them freeze their tracks. As the branches creaked menacingly overhead, a sense of urgency gripped them. With hearts pounding, they exchanged knowing glances, silently agreeing to retreat back to the safety of the campsite and old cabin. Racing through the moonlit forest, their steps quickened, the witch's haunting presence lingering on their minds. As they dashed through the thick forest, the witch's shadow seemed to stretch and reach out, a reminder of the encounter they had with her. Heartbeats thundered in their ears and they pushed forward, that cabin beckoning like a beacon of safety in the darkness. With a final burst of speed, they stumbled into the clearing, panting but unharmed. The witch's presence may linger, but for now, they were safe within the shelter of the cabin's walls. With the witch's shadow still haunting their thoughts, they lay down next to each other, in the safety of the cabin, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The crackling campfire outside provided a flickering light against the encroaching darkness outside, casting shadows on the cabin's walls. As they exchanged nervous glances, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The friends, extremely tired, all passed out from the fear they had just experienced. With the first light of dawn filtering through the cabin's windows, a sense of unease settled upon them. As they roused from the restless slumber, their eyes widened in alarm to find two of their companions missing. Panic gripped their chests as they searched the cabin and its surroundings frantically, but there was no sign of them. With a sense of urgency, the four remaining friends swiftly packed their bags, determination etched on their faces as they embarked on the hike to the nearest ranger station. Each step through the forest heavier, the weight of uncertainty pressing down upon them. As they reached the station, their voices trembled as they recounted the harrowing events of the night and the mysterious disappearance of their friends. The rangers listened intently, their expressions grave, as they pledged to aid in the search of their missing companions. Hope mingled with the fear within the friends, as they awaited news of the unfolding search and fate of those who had vanished into the whispering shadows of those woods. The rangers combed through the forest. Their efforts yielded no trace of the missing friends, except for two hats. The discovery of the hats only deepened the mystery shrouding the disappearance, leaving the friends with a lingering sense of dread and unanswered questions. Despite the thorough search by the rangers, the forest seemed to hold its secrets close. The hats stood as silent witnesses to a puzzle unsolved, a haunting reminder of the friends lost to the enigmatic whispers of that forest. The friends gathered around once more, their hearts heavy with the weight of loss and uncertainty. They sat in silence. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying echoes of the unknown fate that had befallen their companions. Despite the darkness looming around them, a glimmer of resolve sparkles in their eyes, a silent promise to remember their friends and the bond that had united them in the face of darkness. And so, the tale of the friends lost in the forest faded into legend, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that lurk beyond the edge of the known world. That one was interesting. I don't know how I felt about that one. I do like stories that take place in the woods, though. I had fun doing this. yeah, I don't know, I might end up doing this again. So let me know what you thought in the comments, of course. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Bye.